Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel Custom Carving and Epoxy UK. This was me at 3 o'clock in the morning, just thinking to myself, what would happen if I put silicone oil in a white sinker whilst doing the Petri effect? Kept me awake for hours, so I decided the only way to fix that is to try it out in this little experiment. So straight to the workshop we go. No, back inside the workshop for this little experiment. Get your PPE on, get your gloves, get your respirator. Also, I just wanted to do a quick shout out to the legend that is Daniel Cooper as well for all of his inspiration with his epoxy work. I hope you see this video, and I think this is an experiment you haven't tried yet. And that's what I was trying to do, is come up with something different that hasn't been done before. And again, once this idea got in my head, it would not leave my head until it was done. So just going to mix up some resin. I've run out of my usual resin, so that's a bit of a concern here. My clear resin that I normally use for pendants has run out. So as well as trying this experiment out, I'm also going to be trying it with a resin that I wouldn't usually use, which is this Jan Chun resin off of Temu. Normally, I don't have any problems with this in deep fill projects or larger pours, but I've not tried it in smaller sort of jewelry pours yet. And it is a bit of a thicker consistency, which worries me a little bit with regards to the fact that we're going to be trying the Petri effect with this. And I know that if the resin's too thick, it doesn't work as well. So, but we're going to have to go with what we've got and see how we get on. So just going to mix up probably around about 2 ounces, because this is just an experiment. I don't want to use an awful lot of resin. The plan is I'm going to do half, so the left-hand mold with the normal sort of Petri effect that we did in the previous video, which I'll link in the description if you haven't already seen it. We've got some amazing effects. And then this second side, I'm going to add silicone oil to the sinker white and see what difference that makes. I'm also planning to stir half and not stir the other, just to see what effects we get with this experiment. But I'm excited. I'm hoping that we get something that's really different. And I normally use silicone oil in my bigger canvas pours, but I've not tried it in these smaller ones yet. So we'll see how we get on. So just mixing up the resin around about 4 or 5 minutes, equal parts of A and B. Then I'm going to put it in my bubble removal machine from Resiners. If you haven't seen any of the videos on that, have a look. I think they're great for removing bubbles, although I've not tried this resin in it yet. So we'll see how this gets on. And there's also a discount code if you want to get yourself one, which is ccukresin. The other things we're going to be using for this is some silicone oil. I'll put a link to that in the description. And we're also going to be using alcohol inks from Let's Resin, as I know that they work with the Petri effect because they were tested in the last video. If you're struggling with that Petri effect, it could be your inks. I did try some cheaper inks from Temu and they just didn't work, and I couldn't get my sinker right. So by getting the sinker ready done from Let's Resin, that's where I've had the best effects. So that's the resin mixed up. This is the bubble removal machine, just whacking it in there for 5 minutes to remove those bubbles. And whilst the resin's in, I'm just going to spray the molds with this silicone release spray. Keeps your mold shinier for longer, so hopefully you get more life out of them. Another reason to use your respirator as well, because this stuff absolutely stinks and I'd hate to get it in my lungs. This is a silicone oil I'm going to be using. I've used it on a few of my canvas pours with epoxy resin. Creates really cool cells actually. But I haven't tried it in anything this small yet. This is the Sinker White from Let's Resin. Had some great effects with that. And then I'm just going to be using the standard inks. I've got a little dropper here ready with a ball bearing in, and all I'm going to do is pour in halfway, I would say, some of that Sinker White And then the only thing in there is the sinker white and the ball bearing. Quite handy in these larger boxes of the sinker white. You get a little funnel. And I've made sure I wrote on that bottle so I don't mix it up with my other. Make sure you shake this properly before you put it in, because all of those pigments will have probably settled and be all around the bottle. So make sure you give it a good shake before you actually pour it into your bottle. Right, and now that's done, it's halfway filled. I'm going to add, I think, 2, maybe 3 drops of this silicone oil. You don't need a lot for it to make a difference on a canvas, so I'd imagine you don't need a lot in a pendant. So I'm just adding 3 drops, and then I'm going to give it a shake. And again, these are 10 ml bottles, so it's only about 5 ml worth of the sinker I've put in there with 3 drops of this silicone oil. And that's all there is in there, nothing else. Going to give it a shake, and this is what I'm going to use on the other half. And again, just wrote on there um, silicone so I know which one it is, so I don't mix it up with my normal sinker white, which I'm going to still use on the left hand side to get the normal Petri effect, so we've got something to compare it to. For those that are struggling with the Petri effect, you probably did something like what I originally did, which is buy a cheap set of alcohol inks like these from Temu. They're okay, but they don't seem to work in the Petri effect. So what I did is I decided I really wanted to get this right. So I've seen most of the videos where it's really worked, the Let's Resin alcohol inks, and I bought this one, which actually comes with 2 small bottles of the white sinker in it. Since I've used those, I've had no problems. And that's 5 minutes up, but I wasn't particularly happy at this point because normally when I take it out of the resinous bubble machine that I use, I get a crystal clear effect. And on this, there seem to be tiny little micro bubbles still in the resin, which I'm not used to getting from my regular resin. So again, maybe it's because it's a thicker consistency resin. Maybe you shouldn't actually put it in the bubble machine. I don't know, but I wasn't happy at this point. But I'd already mixed it, so I thought, let's do the experiment anyway. Let's have some fun. So just going to fill up these molds. And I'm not sure if you can see here, but there was filled with micro bubbles, and I've not had that with any of my usual resins when I've used the bubble removal machine. I was hoping that they'd degas in the mold and I could just take them off the surface because, as I say, I've never experienced this before. But I think it's the resin. I think that resin shouldn't be used with the bubble removal machine. I think it's too thick a consistency. But as I say, this was just a fun experiment, so I thought I'd persist anyway and try and just get the bubbles off the top once they've degassed a little bit. Just use those bubbles, but it didn't really seem to have any effect. And it's almost cloudy with the amount of bubbles that are in there. So again, let me know in comments if you know what would have caused this. Could it be that if you use a resin too thick in a bubble removal machine, it actually adds more bubbles than removes? Because my usual resin that I use is of a much lighter consistency, so maybe that's a lesson to be learned. But yeah, look, it really didn't have much of an impact. Still got these tiny bubbles absolutely everywhere. So wasn't best pleased at this point. They say though, the show must go on. Once you've started, you can't really stop with resin. So just decided to torch them again, see if it had any difference. And being honest, it didn't. And I think I could have left these for well over an hour and they would have cured with bubbles in. So yeah, lesson to be learnt there. I think the bubble removal machines work better with a low or medium viscosity resin rather than the thicker stuff like this gel chin one off Temu. So as you can see, I tried persisting with it, tried letting those bubbles rise to the top, and then in the end gave in and thought, do you know what? That isn't the point of this experiment. The experiment is to see what effect adding silicone oil to that sinker white is going to have on the Petri effect and what effect we're going to have. So just dropping the inks now. No particular order. I just wanted a variety of different colours. And I was just praying at this point that by adding the alcohol inks, it might burst a few more of those bubbles. Because for the first time since I've had this bubble removal machine, it seems to have added bubbles rather than removed. But I think it is down to the viscosity of the resin. If you know, let me know in comments. If you've had a similar experience, it would be good to know. So there we go. That's the inks dropped. Now to add the sinker white. This is the standard sinker white, which I'm going to put on the left-hand side and hopefully get a standard Petri effect. And then on the right-hand side, we're going to add that white sinker with the silicone oil added. This is the bit that I absolutely love because you get to see all the colours dancing around on top of the resin. Um, Again, I've noticed with using a thicker consistency resin, they didn't appear to dance quite as much as they do on a thinner consistency of resin that I normally use. But it still looked like the effect was working. And look at those colours. And there we go. Tried to do sort of one drop for every colour that was in, but really I just wanted to make sure that the whole back was covered. If there was a space where it didn't look like there was any ink, I just put an extra drop of white in as well. And now for the other side, we're going to use the sinker white with the silicone oil mixed in, giving it a good shake first. And here goes the first drop. And it seems to spread pretty much the same way as the normal standard white sinker. I don't know what I was expecting if I wanted it to be completely different. But at this point, didn't really look too much different to the white sinker that I'd used without the silicone oil added. So yeah, I mean, if you look, if anything, the colours look a little bit more faded, I would say. Um, but that's the only real difference I could see. They seemed a bit more vibrant on the left-hand side with the standard sinker. And then this started to happen. So to me, the top surface almost reminded me a little bit of clotted milk, if that makes sense. But it was still sort of mixing the colours. And at this point, didn't really see too much of a difference between the two. get you down for a closer look now. So this is the left hand side, this is the right. As you can see, there's a slightly different texture difference on the surface, but nothing major. I was expecting more dramatic effects. Um, because silicone oil, as soon as I put it on my canvases, I get big, deep sort of puddles created. And I left it for around about 30 minutes before coming back to test the consistency. Wasn't quite right because you want a stringy effect, and at this point, it wasn't stringy enough. So then I left it probably another 15 minutes and came back to test again. At this point, decided it had enough time and I thought it was about ready. Just giving you a bit of a close-up view of the different look that we've got at the minute. In this one, you could almost see a slightly different texture to the normal texture that we get, and almost little forms being made. So I knew that we would get a difference in result. Once we'd demolded these. So really, really excited now to see what happens. I could still see a few of those micro bubbles in there, but not as many. So just testing the stringiness now. And what you want to see is a little sort of trail of resin. Um, I had a small trail and decided it was time to stir these. So sorry about the camera work here, but I'm trying to give you guys a close-up of how I do my stirs. A little bit shaky. I always try and go from light to dark. I don't know why. I just feel like the lighter colours pulled through the darker colours seem to give a better effect for me. Again, some of these I did as a circle, some of these I tried to do as a heart shape, just whatever took my fancy at the time because this is just an experiment. Again, with this one, just decided to try and pull through some of those colours where there was that translucent patch at the bottom. And this one more of a standard swirl. Make sure you wipe off your stick or whatever you're using every time you come out of the resin. And then the last one for this side. Now looking at these ones, I really wanted to see what effect it would have through not stirring. So I decided at this point I was going to stir some and not all. So probably 50-50, stir half of them and leave half of them unstirred to see what effects we get. And this is the one that I'd already seen, like little spores it almost seemed forming underneath, just through the resin itself. And there almost seem to be little particles of glitter as well on these, but I hadn't used any glitter. Now, I had used this mold previously for an iridescent nail powder, and maybe a little bit was still left on the mold. You can just see that little blue twinkle. And if you're still with us at this point, please like and subscribe to the channel. We want to keep growing. We want to keep this community growing as well. So leave a comment as well. Let us know what you think is going to happen at this point. I'll leave a comment at the end. Let us know if you like the end effect. We want to grow this community and keep on growing. Just gone over 6,000 followers. We're hoping to get to 10,000 in the next few weeks. And then it was a case of leaving it for 24 hours. And 24 hours later, this is what we got. And here we go, the next day, ready for the demold. And I'm excited for this because it's something, hopefully we're going to get some unusual effects. I don't know, and hopefully, obviously, the resin's worked. I wasn't particularly happy with the amount of mini bubbles that seem to stay in the resin. So perhaps lesson to be learnt there. Stick to the resin that you know rather than trying to cheap one off Temu, but we will see what effects we've got. So we'll start off with this side, and this is the one where we should have got the normal effects, the normal Petri effects that we got in the last video. So let's have a look. And we'll start with this green one. And yeah, there's still a lot of those micro bubbles in, even though we removed it from the, even though it went in the bubble removal machine, same as my last project. I mean, we still have got a Petri effect, but there's all of those little tiny bubbles in there, which I'm not overly happy about, to be honest with you. So I think I'm going to have to change the resin and try this experiment again, looking at that. But that's that one. Again, the same with this one. Now we've got that Petri effect, the clouds, and it's, I suppose, slightly risen where we did the pour. But if you just look in there, all of those tiny little micro bubbles that the resin seems to have kept in, which is not what you want in a jewellery piece. So, not happy, if I'm being honest. I think the little micro bubbles do take away. Again, it's a gorgeous little Petri effect that we've got in there. But those micro bubbles for me take away from the whole thing. Now, would you notice if you was wearing this as a pendant? Probably not, because of how tiny they are. But it's still not what we were going for. This one's almost like a planet again, which is pretty cool. And there's a bit of sort of space where the inks didn't fully cover. Now, I'm loving the backs of them, so maybe I will, and again, you can't see any of the micro bubbles in that, so maybe what I'll do is do this the opposite way around, and dome the backs, and that would give us a really nice pendant. I mean, look at the swirl in that. Again, the Petri seems to have worked, and actually in the heart, there's not as many micro bubbles. I can see one bubble there, but I can't actually see those micro bubbles in that. So actually in this form, it's done okay. Still think I prefer the back. Wow, the Petri on that is gorgeous. Just the way the green's sort of running through into the red. Again, no bubbles really visible in that one. So again, that could be used as a pendant. But again, I think I prefer the back compared to the Petri that we actually made. Right, let's go for these two. And then we've got the exciting ones that we put the silicone oil in. So that will be really interesting to see if there's a difference. Wow. You see, the micro bubbles, again, they're just taken away from the piece itself. And actually, I love that one with the colours. It's almost like a flames and then graduating into some sort of plant. Absolutely love that. But it's just such a shame that this resin that I've tried, this Janshun resin from Temu, has left all of these bubbles. So maybe only use that for solid fill projects, you know, rather than jewellery. And again, this one is stunning. Absolutely love that. It's almost like a perfect swirl. Little tiny bit of ribboning effect in the flame there. But absolutely love that. And I think either way, that would make a gorgeous pendant. So yeah, I'm going to have to think about what to do with these. I think I'm going to really look at them, decide if those little tiny micro bubbles do take away from the effect or not, and what I'm going to do. So they're the standard ones. So again, I think the Petri effect came out pretty well. Yeah, quite nice pieces. I think it's just a shame the resin, as I say, in these, especially in these domed ones, it seems more apparent. And I don't know if you can just make out there, but those little micro bubbles you can see going through the piece. Now, again, you've got to really look for them to see them. So actually, if these are backed with some sort of pendant backing, I don't think you would actually notice them. But it's just with me being a bit of a perfectionist, I don't like the fact that those little bubbles are in there. But again, we will see. And I think out of these ones, these two have to be my favourites. This heart, again, absolutely stunning. And again, this one as well. Really, really love that effect. And it's almost like there's a bit of glitter in there, and I didn't put any glitter in. So I don't know where that's come from, but not too much, so that's good. And again, for a different reason, I really like this one. It's like the ocean to me. That looks like the ocean from up above. And the green is almost where the ocean meets the landmass. But again, let me know your thoughts and comments, what you think. Now, time for the exciting ones. So what I'm going to try and do is put the ones next to the most similar ones that we did. So I'm going to start off with the little green one. Whoa. That is bizarre. I don't know if you can see, but we have a completely different pattern and texture here. It's like the sinker got pulled out a little bit more by the silicone. And it's like it almost spread it all to the sides as well. So we've got this weird patterned coloured effect with a clearer space, and the white sinker that we mixed with the silicone oil has come through as just white and then left sort of the coloured background. So that is very, very different. Yeah, it's like almost like a bit of a paint explosion, I suppose. But that's a very different effect. So it just shows you do get a different effect by putting in the silicone oil in the sinker. Wow. And again, it's very unusual. It's almost blobbing, but not quite. And if you just look in the center there, that is amazing. And it is a completely different effect to what I've done before on Petri. So yeah, I kind of like it. And it is something that I don't think I've ever seen before, which is what I'm always looking for in resin art, is something unique and different that I haven't seen before. Let's go with this little heart that didn't really fill. Now you see that one, to me, it looks a bit more blotty. Not as keen on that. But again, we couldn't fill the mould, so that's probably why with that one. Not so keen on that. Love the colours, but not a big fan. Let's go with the other heart. Wow. I do actually quite like this effect. And what I really like is I don't think I've seen it before. And it's almost like a colour blobbing at the sides, where it's pushed all the silicone oil's pushed all the colour to the sides almost. And then you've still got that Petri effect in the centre, but slightly more pronounced and bubbly almost. But yeah, again, really like that. That's so unique, so different. Wow. Look at that. It's just strange. It's like where the silicone oil must have pushed all the colours to the side, made it heavier. And then we've almost got this blobbing around the sides. And then in the centre, you've got those spores that are slightly longer. I actually really like this. And and I like the uniqueness. I don't think I've seen it before. Now this one, I love the back. Just those rainbow effects running through. Wow. Again, it's like an artist's palette just going around the side. And then in the center, you've got these slightly elevated spores coming through, which seem to be mainly white sinker. So I don't know if that was the silicone oil again, stopping it taking the color from the piece. But I don't know. What do you guys think? I really like these, and I think they would look really unique in a pendant. Wow. Look at this one. That is absolutely stunning. And I don't mind this effect at the side. I actually quite like it. Don't know what you guys think, but that is absolutely stunning. The colours. Wow. And the last one. Again, love the colours on the back on this one. Wow. Again, look, it's just like a weird little colourful rainbow going around the edge, but then you've still got that Petri sort of ribbon effect in the centre. That has to be my favourite, I think. So, a couple of lessons learned, I suppose. Always use my usual clear resin, although actually the bubbles don't seem as apparent in these either. Whether that's because the design's slightly bigger and thicker, I don't know, but I think that resin I'm going to keep for deeper moulds, things like that, and stick with my standard 1-to-1 resin for pendants. But look at that effect. Something different. I've not seen it done before. Silicone oil in your sinker white, and this is the effect you get.